Okay, hi BookTube, Aaron here. Hope you're doing very well. Today we're going to be carrying on with my library tour for 2024, and I'm afraid you'll have to excuse the shaky camera work because I'm going to be moving the camera around to show you the shelves. Today we're looking at poetry, and there's quite a lot of poetry in there, so that's kind of why I've taken this tack. So I'll just give you the overview of the shelves, and if there's a collection that sort of stands out, I'll show you that. But there are also a few sneaky Penguin classics that have snuck into the poetry shelves as well. So I'll show you those as well, just so we can be a little more completist when it comes to Penguin classics. So I'll turn the camera around and we'll see how this goes. Let's have a look. So here are the shelves themselves. So we've got 4 shelves here of poetry. We'll start at the top. I think I might stand on a chair actually. I am quite tall, but it's best not to receive any injuries. And here in this corner, we've got some poetry anthologies. The couple on top are some of my favourites. We've got the Penguin Book of Modern Verse. Move it over there. And that introduced me to loads of modern American poets. Then we've got the Penguin Book of Contemporary Verse. So a bit of a distinction there, I suppose, that's been made. This one's not in quite as good condition. And then from a later Penguin series, we've got Georgian poetry as well. So I suppose sort of the prefiguring poets to modernism, I suppose. And then it sort of goes on from there. We've got 20th century French poems, and we've got surrealist poetry in English. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just moving the ones that are on top of the Penguin classics, because then we've got the Penguin Book of the Prose Poem, which I really, really like. Yeah, not everyone is such a fan of prose poetry, but I quite like that book. The Penguin Book of Modern African Poetry, if it will come into focus. There it is. And then finally, we've got the Penguin Book of Haiku, which I wasn't a massive fan of. Wasn't a massive fan of. I'm not sure whether I'm not a massive fan of haiku or whether I just wasn't a fan of the selection in that edition. I'm not entirely sure. But I'm just going to pop these back while I'm here to avoid the mess. While I'm doing that, we'll move on. So next to that, we've got Kaveh Akbar. If you can see him just here, 2 collections. He's one of my favourite contemporary poets. He's just published a novel. I'm not sure if it's something I would read. I'm not sure, but I really like his poetry. And then moving on from there, it's really tempting just to go through all of them, but I'm going to try my best. We've got Simon Armitage, Poet Laureate at the moment. We've got some Auden there, Baudelaire. Moving on, let's jump over to William Blake. It's one of the Penguin classics. Maybe one of my favourite looking Penguin classics, the complete poems of William Blake. Some Roberto Bolaño there, The Unknown University, which is quite curious. So I'm intrigued to see what his poetry is like. We've got the poetry of Borges there, his selected poems. We've got some Brecht here, some of the Brownings, so that's just Robert Browning. This one is Robert and Elizabeth Barrett Browning. And then we've got another Penguin classic, C.P. Carafi, his selected poems, and then he's hanging out with Paul Celan and René Char. Moving down, we've got some Chaucer in the corner there, what I suppose is the complete works of Chaucer, and then hanging out with Inga Christiansen and John Clare and Gillian Clarke, a great Welsh poet. We've got some Coleridge, so yet another Penguin classic. It's maybe time for me to get down off the chair, and then he's hanging out nearby. We've got Emily Dickinson, John Donne, Alva Darcy, another contemporary poet I like and one of my tutors at university. And then we've got a nice sort of wad of T.S. Eliot here. We've got his selected poems, The Wasteland, his 4 quartets, and his play, Murder in the Cathedral. But I wanted to keep it with the rest of his poetry. Got W.S. Graham's new collected poems here. He's just a poet I love, just very idiosyncratic. It's hard to sort of place him, I think, with other 20th century poets. The closest to him, at least in the early period, is Dylan Thomas, but he's very much his own thing, so I really enjoy him for that. Got Hafez and some other Persian poets, Khatun and Sakani, translated by Dick Davis. This is maybe one of the most beautiful books that I own. And then they are hanging out with Seamus Heaney. We've got his new selected poems in two volumes, and the Aeneid, book 4 as well, his translation of that. And that's hanging out with The Temple by George Herbert, which is looking very, very beaten up there. Another Penguin classic for you. We've got the selected poems and fragments of Friedrich Hölderlin, a poet that I need to reread because I'm still really intrigued by him. He had a massive influence, I think, on Rilke, who I really love, and I think he was also friends with Hegel and some of the other German idealist philosophers, and so a really interesting figure in, I suppose, world literature. And then another sort of stack of a particular poet. We've got Ted Hughes. We've got his Hawk in the Rain, his first collection in a nice naked hardback. And then next to that, we've got Lupercal. We've got Wadwoe, which some of my favourite Ted Hughes poems are in Wadwoe. It's quite a curious book. It's got a play in it, and it's got some short stories. It's just thrown in to bulk it out. Then we've got Crow, which is really, really intense, but maybe some of Ted Hughes' best poetry is in Crow. Then we've got Gaudet, or Gaudet, or Gaudete. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. I heard someone pronounce it the way it's supposed to be pronounced, and I've forgotten, so I should try and find out. Then we've got The Iron Wolf, which are nature poems for children. We've got his Tales from Ovid, so his version of Ovid's Metamorphoses. And then finally, we've got Birthday Letters as well. And then I will show you this one next to it, because it's one of my favourite book covers. It's Impossible Loves by Dario Jaramillo, a Colombian poet, if I'm remembering correctly. This is translated by Richard Gwynne, another one of my university tutors, and I've got some of his books. If we shuffle back, we've got his book Stowaway, a Levantine adventure, which is a very fun poetry collection, and his Sad Giraffe Cafe, which is all prose poetry again. Moving over quickly, we've got some Keats there, next to some D.H. Lawrence. I really don't actually like this edition, actually. I'm not a massive fan of it, so I might replace it, or I've got plenty of Lawrence in anthologies, so maybe I'll just get rid of it. I've got Larkin there. I'm not a massive fan of Larkin. I should probably reread him and try and work out what I think about him. I've got Robert Lowell there as well. During lockdown, he was sort of one of the things that kept me busy, just reading through his collected poems. Moving down again, in the corner here, we've got Andrew Marvell, so yet another Penguin classic. He's one I need to spend more time with, because I've just read the famous poems, really. Got Paradise Lost by John Milton, which I've only read in excerpt. Moving on, Edwin Muir, or Muir, most famous for translating Kafka with his wife. I think they knew Kafka as well. They lived in Prague in the early 20th century. But he's an excellent poet in his own right. And then next to him, got some Paul Muldoon, who is another just great contemporary poet. Got Madoc, which is really strange, maybe the strangest of these. The Annals of Chile, which might be one of my favourites, with a really odd cover. And we've got Hay, 1,000 Things, or 1,000 Things Worth Knowing. The first poem in here is an elegy for Seamus Heaney after he died, and it's really wonderful. And then Frolic and Detour, one of his more recent collections. I really, really like that, actually. And then I picked up his selected poems, just to give me an idea of what's in the gaps, what I've been missing out from in his other collections that I don't have. Then I'll sort of move over to another little stack of an individual poet. We've got Alice Oswald, maybe my favourite living poet. Dart is just an amazing long poem about the River Dart in it's gone out of my head, in Devon, and it's just a wonderful poem. Her memorial is her version of the Iliad, a kind of reworking of the Iliad, and that's really, really wonderful. I'd really recommend that. And she's done the same thing, a kind of excavation of the Odyssey as well, which I need to get at some point. And then we've got Falling Awake, which is one of her more recent ones, and probably my favourite collection from her. Then moving on, we've got a bit of Sylvia Plath here. Her collected poems are missing because I'm reading them at the moment. We've got some Ezra Pound here. The more I read Ezra Pound, the less sure I am about him. But I've got his entire cantos there for a rainy day, if I ever decide to go through them. Pierre Reverdy, I'll just show him, because where with Ezra Pound I'm not sure about him and seem to like him less and less the more I read him, even though there are some great poems. With Pierre Reverdy, I enjoy him the more I read him, and this is all I have of his poetry, more or less, so I need to find some more at some point. And then next up, we've got some Rilke over here. I've got the Dueno Elegies, which has been attacked by the rain a little bit. And then sort of collected poems. It's not everything, but it's all of his mature work, all the stuff that's worth reading. So it sort of cuts out a lot of his earlier stuff, which was not really that good. And then his sonnets to Orpheus as well. And then they're hanging out with Rimbaud. And then we've got some Maurice Riordan, Robin Robertson, and poetry by W.G. Sebald, who is more known for his prose works, for his novels. And then we'll get down again. I'll have to get down on my knees. So I started standing on a chair and now I'm kneeling. I've got The Golden Gate in the corner there by Vikram Seth. To Provide All People, which is a poem about the NHS by Owen Shears. Got the collected poems, or maybe selected poems actually. Only the selected poems and prose of Shelley, which I really love. A.E. Starlings, this is all I have, a collection like by A.E. Starlings, another great contemporary poet. Moving on, we've got some Wallace Stevens. That's all I own of Wallace Stevens. The jury's out for me with Stevens. There are some poems by him I quite like, and others that I like a little less. George Surtees, his new and collected poems, which I haven't read yet. I need to get to them at some point. Tennyson, I think more or less all of his poetry, with illustrations by Millay, Rossetti, and Maclise and others. So the Pre-Raphaelites on full show there. Some Dylan Thomas. I've actually got an omnibus of Dylan Thomas, which I think has everything that's here. So we've got all of Under Milkwood there. And then we've got a treasury, so it's got stories, poems, and broadcasts as well. But I do prefer the way these two look, so I have to work out whether there's anything in the omnibus that isn't in these. Thomas Traherne there, I'd like to get into Thomas Traherne at some point. I've got some Walcott there, Vernon Watkins. We've got the deathbed edition of Leaves of Grass. The jury's out for William Carlos Williams as well for me. There are some poems by him I really like, particularly Spring and All. That's really, really good. But yeah, I'm still not sure what I think about him. Got the major works of William Wordsworth, which I would love to do a deep dive into at some point. And then another one of my favourite book covers here, we've got the W.B. Yeats poem selected by Seamus Heaney, which is just a lovely, lovely book. And then we move into some anonymous poetry, some old epics and such. We've got the Epic of Gilgamesh in a Penguin Classics edition. We've got Seamus Heaney's verse translation of Beowulf in a Norton critical edition. We've got Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, which is in the original. And then we've got the Song of Roland as well. And then next to that, got a pile of Dante with a little poetry anthology that my sister's in just there, and some reflections from the Lily Pond, which is basically frog yoga. But then, yeah, I've got some Dante there. So we've got The Life of Dante, his Prime, Vita Nuova, then Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise. I need to get back to Paradise at some point. I've been putting it off because I recently reread Inferno and Purgatory. And then we've just got another translation there of the whole Divine Comedy. And then just at the end, we've got The Wasteland by T.S. Eliot again. And this is a facsimile edition with the sort of original drafts and annotations in it. So that's again something for me to just spend some time with and get really nerdy with, since it's a poem that I really love. And that's it. That is a brief tour of my poetry shelves. Again, apology for the shaky camera work, but I hope you at least found something that was interesting in there. And yeah, I feel good for showing you the rest of the Penguin Classics. Might be one or two in other places as well, but I think you've seen most of them now. So yeah, thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll see you soon. So take care. Bye bye.